Today something shifts in your love life, and you can't quite name it. You wake up and the person you trusted yesterday feels suddenly uncertain today. The relationship that felt secure last week feels fragile this morning. The commitment you thought was solid now feels questionable. And it's not that anything dramatic happened. Nobody cheated, nobody left, nobody even said anything particularly wrong. But something invisible changed, something underneath, and you feel it in your body. You feel exposed, vulnerable, unsafe, like the ground you've been standing on just revealed itself as less solid than you thought. This isn't paranoia. This isn't insecurity. This isn't you being too sensitive or overthinking again. This is Venus at 20 degrees Pisces, forming a semi-sextile to Saturn at 1 degree Aries. And when Venus, the planet of love, relationships, emotional safety, makes any contact with Saturn, the planet of tests, limitations, reality checks, you don't just feel love, you feel the fear underneath it. You don't just feel connection, you feel the conditions attached to it. You don't just feel safe, you feel all the ways you might not be safe. Today, the universe isn't punishing you, it's testing you. It's asking, is this relationship actually secure, or have you just been pretending it is? Is this person actually committed, or have you just been hoping they are? Is your heart actually safe here, or have you just been too afraid to look? I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening today. Why Psyche, the Greek goddess who had to prove love in the dark, shows us that emotional security isn't about certainty, it's about trust even when you can't see. What Venus semi-sextile Saturn actually does, and why this minor aspect creates major emotional questioning, which 3 signs feel this test most intensely, and what you need to do today to pass the test without destroying what's real. Because today isn't about whether your relationship survives, it's about whether you can feel your fear without letting it dictate your choices, whether you can question without attacking, whether you can be vulnerable even when you feel exposed. Today, Venus tests your heart, and Saturn makes sure the test is real. Psyche had to love in complete darkness or lose everything. Let me tell you about Psyche. In Greek mythology, she's a mortal woman so beautiful that people start worshipping her instead of Aphrodite, and Aphrodite, goddess of love, gets jealous, dangerously jealous. So she sends her son Eros to make Psyche fall in love with something hideous. But when Eros sees Psyche, he falls in love with her himself, and he marries her, but there's one condition, one non-negotiable rule. She can never see his face, he comes to her only in darkness. She feels him, she hears him, she knows his touch, but she never sees him, and for a while she's happy, she trusts, she loves without seeing, she feels safe in the dark. But then her sisters visit, and they plant doubt. How do you know he's not a monster, they ask. How do you know he loves you? You've never even seen him. Maybe he's hiding something terrible. Maybe you're not safe. And the doubt grows, the questions multiply, until one night, Psyche can't stand it anymore. While Eros sleeps, she lights a candle. She breaks the one rule. She looks, and what she sees is the most beautiful god she's ever witnessed. Not a monster, not a threat, just love in its purest form. But she's broken the condition, and a drop of hot wax falls on Eros and wakes him. He sees what she's done, and he leaves. The relationship shatters, not because there was no love, but because she couldn't trust without seeing. Here's what makes Psyche's mythology essential for understanding today. The test wasn't about whether Eros was trustworthy, he was. The test was about whether Psyche could feel safe without proof, whether she could stay in love even when she couldn't see everything, whether she could hold her fear without letting it destroy what was real. And she failed, not because she was wrong to have fear, but because she let the fear dictate the action. Today is your Psyche moment. Today, Venus in Pisces, the most vulnerable, most open, most trusting placement, makes contact with Saturn in Aries, the planet that demands proof, evidence, certainty. And suddenly you're in the dark. Suddenly you're questioning. Suddenly you need to see to feel safe. And the question is, can you hold the fear without lighting the candle? Can you feel exposed without demanding proof? Can you trust even when you can't see everything? what's actually happening astrologically, and why minor aspects create major emotional tests. All right, let me break down what's happening, because this isn't a major aspect. Venus, semi-sextile Saturn, is a 30-degree angle. In traditional astrology, that's considered minor. But here's what people don't understand about minor aspects. They're not weaker, they're subtler. They don't announce themselves with drama. They work underneath. They create that feeling you can't quite name, that tension you can't quite explain, that question you can't quite answer. Major aspects, conjunctions, oppositions, squares are obvious. You know when they're happening because everything explodes or shifts dramatically. Minor aspects whisper, they plant seeds of doubt. They create just enough friction that you notice, but not enough that you can pinpoint why. Today, Venus at 20 degrees Pisces is forming this semi-sextile to Saturn at 1 degree Aries. Venus in Pisces is the most emotionally open Venus can be. Pisces is boundaryless, unconditionally loving, trusting without proof. It's the energy of I love you exactly as you are. But Saturn in Aries, freshly entered into the sign of self, is about boundaries, independence, reality checks. It's the energy of, but am I safe here? And when these two make contact, even minor contact, you get internal conflict. You want to trust, but you need proof. You want to stay open, but you feel the need to protect. You want to love unconditionally, but suddenly the conditions matter. Here's what this looks like practically. Today, you're going to have moments where you question your relationship for no clear reason. Your partner does something small, forgets to text back quickly, makes a comment that lands wrong, prioritizes something else, and suddenly you're spiraling. Do they actually love me? Am I actually safe here? What if I'm giving more than they are? And the spiral isn't based on evidence. It's based on fear, fear that's been hiding underneath. And Venus-Saturn just brought it to the surface. That's the test. That's what today does. It makes you feel your emotional insecurity so you can see it clearly, so you can choose consciously whether to trust it or question it. And there's one more layer. We're 95% toward the full moon lunar eclipse on March 3rd. The moon is almost completely full, building maximum tension. Eclipses reveal, they expose, they make visible what's been hidden. So today, 2 days before the eclipse, you're already feeling the exposure. You're already sensing what needs to be seen. And Venus-Saturn is the emotional dress rehearsal. It's showing you where you feel unsafe. So the eclipse can show you whether that fear is accurate or whether it's just old programming that needs to be released. Pisces, you feel everything, and today you feel too much. If you're a Pisces sun, moon, or rising, Venus is in your sign right now, and that means every Venus transit you feel personally, intimately, in your body. Venus in Pisces makes you emotionally permeable. You absorb your partner's energy, you feel their moods before they speak them, you sense their withdrawals before they act them. And today, when Venus in your sign touches Saturn, you don't just feel your own insecurity, you feel theirs too. You feel the relationship's fear, you feel the unspoken doubts, and it's overwhelming. Here's what specifically happens for Pisces today. You wake up feeling emotionally raw, like your skin is too thin, like you can feel things others can't see. And in your relationship, you notice things, small things. Your partner is slightly distant. They're on their phone more than usual. They don't look at you the same way, and you immediately create a story. They're pulling away, they're losing interest. I'm too much, I'm not enough. And that story feels true because you're so sensitive, you mistake feeling for fact. You think because you feel it, it must be real. Here's your specific work for today. Morning, write down 3 facts about your relationship. Not feelings, facts. They texted me good morning. They made plans for next week. They said I love you yesterday. Facts ground you. Afternoon, when you notice yourself creating a story, pause. Ask, is this fact or fear? If it's fear, acknowledge it. I feel scared, but I don't have evidence this is true. Evening, have one vulnerable conversation, not accusatory, just honest. I'm feeling insecure today. Can you reassure me? Give them the chance to meet you. Most of the time they will. Today, Pisces, your sensitivity isn't wrong, but it's not the whole truth. You feel everything, but feeling doesn't make it real. Today you practice discernment. Today you feel the fear without becoming it. Today you trust even when you can't see everything. That's the medicine. That's the growth. That's how you pass the test. Aries, Saturn just entered your sign, and suddenly everything's about you. Now, Aries, Sun, Moon, or Rising, Saturn just entered your sign on February 13th. That means for the next 2 years, Saturn is testing your identity, your independence, your sense of self. And today, when Venus in Pisces touches Saturn in your sign, the test is, can you be committed to someone and still be yourself? Can you love someone and still maintain boundaries? Can you stay in relationship without losing your autonomy? Because that's what Venus-Saturn asks. And for Aries, that question is existential. Here's what specifically happens for Aries today. You feel pressure in your relationship, not dramatic pressure, subtle pressure. Your partner wants more time, more attention, more emotional availability, and you feel it as a threat, not because you don't love them, but because part of you needs to remain separate, needs to maintain independence. And today you're hyper-aware of every moment you're giving yourself away. Every compromise feels like sacrifice. Every accommodation feels like loss of self. Here's your specific work for today. Morning, acknowledge what you need independently. Write it down. I need time alone. I need to pursue my goals. I need space to be me. Naming needs makes them negotiable instead of threatening. Afternoon, communicate one boundary clearly, not defensively, just direct. I need an hour to myself before we talk tonight. I need to finish this project before I can focus on us. Direct communication prevents resentment. Evening, practice being present. When you're with your partner, actually be there, not half distracted thinking about what you're losing. Fully there, because presence in the moments you're together creates safety for independence in the moments you're not. Today, Aries, the relationship isn't asking you to disappear, it's asking you to show up as yourself, to stop pretending you don't have needs, to stop performing emotional availability you don't feel. Today you practice being honest about your boundaries without making them weapons. Today you stay in relationship while remaining yourself. That's the test. That's the growth. That's how you become both independent and intimately connected. Capricorn, you're testing commitment by withdrawing and nobody wins. Okay, Capricorn, Sun, Moon, or Rising, Saturn is your ruling planet, which means every Saturn transit you feel as a personal directive, a command from the universe to get serious, to test reality, to make sure foundations are solid. And today, when Venus in Pisces touches your Saturn in Aries, you feel the need to test your relationship, not consciously, not deliberately, but through withdrawal, through emotional distance, through suddenly pulling back to see if they chase. Here's what specifically happens for Capricorn today. You wake up and something feels off in your relationship. You can't name it, but you sense instability, and your instinct is to protect, to test, to pull back slightly and see how they respond. So you're less available, less warm, less responsive, not dramatically, just enough. And you're watching, measuring. Do they notice? Do they care? Do they reach for me? Or let me go? And you think this is wisdom. You think this is protecting yourself. But it's actually self-sabotage, because you're creating the distance you fear exists. Here's your specific work for today. Morning, notice when you want to withdraw, when you want to test, when you want to pull back to see if they follow. Notice it as a pattern, not a truth. Afternoon, do the opposite. When you want to withdraw, move closer. Send the text you were withholding. Have the conversation you were avoiding. Choose connection instead of control. Evening, ask directly for what you need. I'm feeling insecure about us. Can we talk? Direct vulnerability is stronger than indirect testing. It creates actual safety instead of performing tests. Today, Capricorn, you don't protect your heart by building walls. You protect it by being honest about your fear. Today, you practice asking for reassurance instead of testing whether it's offered. Today, you risk vulnerability instead of engineering certainty. That's the test. That's the growth. That's how you build real emotional security instead of just performing control. The test protocol and why emotional security is practice, not proof. All right, let me give you the protocol for today because here's what most people get wrong about emotional security. They think it's a destination, a place you arrive when you finally have enough proof, enough certainty, enough evidence that you're safe. But that's not how it works. Emotional security isn't something you achieve, it's something you practice every single day, every single moment. You practice trusting even when you can't see everything. You practice staying open even when you feel exposed. You practice holding fear without letting it dictate action. That's the work. That's what today is training you to do. First, today, when you notice fear arising, name it out loud. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling insecure. I'm questioning whether I'm safe here. Naming fear makes it conscious. And once it's conscious, you can choose how to respond to it instead of being controlled by it. Don't judge the fear. Don't shame yourself for feeling it. Just name it. That's step one. Second, ask yourself, what proof would make me feel safe? And notice if the answer is nothing or everything. Because if nothing would make you feel safe, the problem isn't the relationship. The problem is your capacity to receive safety. And if you need everything, complete certainty, perfect behavior, constant reassurance, the problem isn't your partner. The problem is you're asking for something that doesn't exist in adult relationships. Real safety exists in the middle, in partial proof, in good enough trust. So notice what you're actually asking for. Third, communicate vulnerability before you communicate accusation. Today, if you need to talk to your partner, lead with feeling, I'm feeling insecure, not you're being distant. I'm questioning our connection, not you don't prioritize me. Vulnerability invites connection. Accusation creates defense, and connection is what you actually want. Fourth, tonight Mercury conjunct Venus in Pisces offers tender communication. If you need to have a difficult conversation, tonight after 7 p.m. is the time. The energy is gentle, compassionate, willing to listen. Use it. Say what you've been afraid to say. Ask what you've been afraid to ask. Give your relationship the chance to meet you in the fear instead of running from it. And fifth, remember that today's test isn't about whether your relationship is perfect. It's about whether you can hold imperfection without catastrophizing, whether you can feel fear without acting from it, whether you can question without destroying. That's emotional maturity. That's what Venus-Saturn teaches. That's what makes love sustainable instead of just intense. All right, today, Venus at 20 degrees Pisces forms a semi-sextile to Saturn at 1 degree Aries. Psyche lights the candle and sees the god she's been loving in the dark. And you feel exposed, vulnerable, suddenly aware of all the ways you might not be safe. But here's what the myth teaches. Psyche eventually gets Eros back, but only after she completes impossible tasks. Only after she proves she can hold her fear without destroying what's real. Only after she learns that love isn't about seeing everything, it's about trusting even in the dark. Today is your impossible task. Today you feel the fear and stay anyway. You notice the doubt and communicate anyway. You sense the exposure and remain open anyway. Do the protocol, name the fear. Notice what proof you're demanding. Lead with vulnerability. Communicate tonight. Hold imperfection without catastrophizing. This is how you pass the test. This is how you build real emotional security. This is how you become Psyche, who earns love back, not by seeing everything, but by being willing to feel everything and stay. The universe tests your heart today, and you pass by being brave enough to remain soft.